In a small town on the outskirts of Lagos lived a young woman named Amara, who seemed to have everything for happiness: a beautiful home, a successful husband, and loving children. Her husband, Olusii, was a renowned lawyer whose career was skyrocketing. But behind the facade of their perfect life lay cracks. Amara's days were filled with routines that painted the picture of an ideal life. She woke up early every morning to prepare breakfast for her family before sending the kids off to school. Their home, a spacious bungalow surrounded by lush greenery, was always immaculate, its walls adorned with family photos and vibrant African art. The scent of fresh flowers from the garden lingered in the air, blending seamlessly with the aroma of traditional Nigerian dishes wafting from the kitchen. Olusii, her husband, was the epitome of success. His tailored suits and polished shoes spoke volumes about his dedication to his profession. Clients sought him out not only for his legal expertise, but also for his charisma and charm. He was often invited to speak at conferences and featured in local newspapers as one of Lagos' rising stars. To outsiders, he appeared to be the perfect husband: handsome, accomplished, and devoted to his family. But beneath this glittering surface, there were signs of trouble. Amara had noticed subtle changes over the past few months. Olusii no longer came home for dinner as often as he used to. When he did, he seemed distracted, scrolling through his phone instead of engaging in conversation. Their once vibrant connection had faded into polite exchanges about household matters or updates about the children. Amara tried to ignore these warning signs, convincing herself that his behavior was due to stress from work. Yet, deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Her intuition whispered to her late at night when the house was quiet, and she lay awake wondering if she still held her husband's heart. One day, Amara accidentally discovered messages on her husband's phone, tender exchanges with another woman. Her heart shattered. She tried to talk to Olusii, but he denied everything, claiming it was just a friend. However, her intuition told her the truth. Her marriage was on the verge of collapse. It happened on an ordinary afternoon while Amara was tidying up the living room. Olusii had left his phone on the coffee table, something he rarely did. Curiosity got the better of her, and when she picked it up, a notification popped up on the screen. It was a message from someone named Ngozi. "I miss you. Can we meet tonight?" Her hands trembled as she opened the thread. What she found made her stomach churn. There were dozens of messages exchanged between Ngozi and Olusii, flirty compliments, plans for secret meetings, and even declarations of love. Each word felt like a dagger piercing her heart. That evening, when Olusii returned home, Amara confronted him. Tears streamed down her face as she showed him the messages. At first, he looked shocked, then defensive. "It's nothing," he insisted. "She's just a colleague. You're blowing this out of proportion." But Amara wasn't convinced. She saw the guilt flicker in his eyes, the way he avoided meeting her gaze. She begged him to explain, to tell her what she had done wrong, but he refused to engage further. Instead, he stormed out of the house, leaving her alone with her pain. For days, Amara wrestled with conflicting emotions: anger, sadness, betrayal. She wanted to scream, to cry, to throw things. But most of all, she wanted her husband back. She loved him deeply and couldn't bear the thought of losing him. That's when she decided to take drastic measures. Desperate to win back his love, Amara decided to seek help from a local herbalist, Mama Ade, who lived on the edge of town. The old woman was known for her knowledge of herbs and ancient rituals. Amara came to her hoping to find a way to bring her husband's heart back. Mama Ade's hut stood at the edge of the forest, shrouded in mystery. Locals whispered tales of her powers, how she could heal the sick, bring luck to struggling businesses, and even mend broken hearts. Some called her a witch, others revered her as a wise healer. Either way, Amara knew she had no other options left. The journey to Mama Ade's home was long and winding. As Amara walked along the narrow dirt path leading to the hut, the air grew cooler, and the sounds of the bustling town faded away. The forest loomed around her, its shadows stretching like ghostly fingers. By the time she reached the clearing where the hut stood, her nerves were frayed, but determination kept her moving forward. Inside, Mama Ade sat cross-legged on a woven mat, her wrinkled face illuminated by the dim light of oil lamps. Shelves lined the walls, cluttered with jars containing strange powders, dried herbs, and animal bones. The air smelled of incense and earth. Amara hesitated for a moment before speaking. "I need your help," she said softly, her voice trembling. "My husband, he doesn't love me anymore. I think he's seeing someone else. Please, is there anything you can do to bring him back?" Mama Ade studied her silently, her piercing eyes seeming to look straight into Amara's soul. After a long pause, she nodded slowly. "Love is a fragile thing," she murmured. "But yes, I can help you. Be warned, though, magic always comes with a price." Mama Ade listened carefully to her story, studied her palms, and offered her a herbal concoction. "This will help him love you again," she assured, handing over a small pouch of dried herbs. Without hesitation, Amara agreed. Mama Ade traced the lines on Amara's palm with her bony finger, muttering under her breath. Then she rose and shuffled to one of the shelves, selecting a handful of ingredients. She crushed them together in a mortar, adding drops of liquid from a vial labeled with symbols Amara couldn't decipher. "This mixture must be added to his food," Mama Ade instructed, tying the powder into a small cloth pouch. "Within days, you will see a change in him. But remember, once set in motion, magic cannot be undone without consequences." Amara clutched the pouch tightly, gratitude swelling in her chest. "Thank you," she whispered, bowing slightly. She paid the herbalist and hurried home, eager to put the plan into action. That night, she sprinkled the powder into Olusiai's favorite stew, watching anxiously as he ate. For the first time in weeks, he smiled at her, complimenting the meal. Hope flickered in her heart like a tiny flame. At first, everything seemed perfect. After Amara added the concoction to her husband's food, he indeed became more attentive. He started spending more time at home, giving her gifts, and even helping with the children. Amara was overjoyed, believing the problem was solved. Over the next few days, Olusiai transformed. He brought Amara flowers, took her out for dinner, and spent evenings playing with the children. They laughed together again, and for a brief moment, it felt like the old days. Amara allowed herself to believe that the worst was behind them. She dismissed her lingering doubts, telling herself that love had simply needed a little nudge to reignite. Even the neighbors commented on how happy they seemed, remarking on the renewed spark in their relationship. Yet, despite the apparent improvements, there was an underlying tension that Amara couldn't quite place. Sometimes, Olusiai would stare at her with an intensity that made her uneasy, as if he were seeing someone else entirely. Other times, he muttered under his breath, his words too low for her to catch. But soon strange things began to happen. Olusiai grew aggressive and suspicious. He constantly checked her phone, accused her of infidelity, and even followed her when she left the house. His behavior became increasingly unstable, and Amara noticed that he often talked to himself, as if arguing with someone invisible. The change was gradual but undeniable. One morning, Olusiai demanded to know why she had received a call from a male number. When she explained it was just a client calling about her catering business, he didn't believe her. "Why are you lying to me?" he shouted, slamming his fist on the table. From that point on, his jealousy spiraled out of control. He interrogated her about every text message, every phone call, every interaction with friends. He installed security cameras around the house, claiming it was for safety, but Amara knew better. Even worse, he began acting erratically. During dinner, he would suddenly stop eating and glare at the wall, muttering angrily. Once, Amara caught him standing in the middle of the living room, staring at nothing, his expression twisted with rage. "Who are you talking to?" she asked cautiously. He turned to her, his eyes wild. "They won't leave me alone," he growled. Moreover, Amara herself began hearing voices. They whispered to her at night, accusing her of using magic and warning her that she had awakened evil. Sometimes she saw shadows in the corners of the room or felt cold breath on her neck. Her children also started complaining about seeing a strange person in the house, though no one except the family had entered. The whispers began softly, almost imperceptibly. At first, Amara thought it was her imagination playing tricks on her. But soon, the voices grew louder, more insistent. They accused her of meddling with forces beyond her understanding, mocking her desperation and warning her of dire consequences. Then came the shadows. Late at night, when the house was silent, Amara would catch glimpses of dark figures moving in the periphery of her vision. Whenever she turned to look, they vanished, leaving her heart pounding. Her children weren't spared either. One evening, her youngest son ran crying to her, claiming he had seen a man standing in the hallway. "He was wearing black clothes and staring at me," the boy sobbed. Amara searched the house but found no trace of anyone. Fear settled over the household like a suffocating blanket. What had started as a desperate attempt to save her marriage had unleashed something far darker, a curse that threatened to consume them all. One night, Amara woke up to a loud noise in the living room. She found Oluseyi standing in the middle of the room, holding their wedding photo. His eyes were empty, and his face was distorted with rage. The house was eerily silent except for the faint hum of the ceiling fan above her bed. Amara stirred awake, her heart racing as she heard what sounded like glass shattering downstairs. At first, she thought it might be an intruder, or perhaps one of the children sleepwalking again, but something deep inside told her this was different. She slipped out of bed, wrapping herself in a robe before cautiously descending the stairs. The living room was dimly lit by moonlight streaming through the windows, casting long shadows across the floor. And there he stood, Oluseyi, in the center of the room, clutching their wedding photo in trembling hands. His posture was rigid, his shoulders hunched forward as if weighed down by some invisible force. His eyes, usually warm and familiar, now seemed hollow, devoid of any recognition or humanity. His lips curled into a snarl, and when he spoke, his voice was low and guttural, unlike anything Amara had ever heard from him. "You did this," he hissed, pointing at her. "You bound me by force. I can't be free anymore." Amara froze, her breath catching in her throat. "What are you talking about?" she stammered, taking a hesitant step toward him. But he recoiled, holding the photo like a shield between them. "You think I don't know?" he spat, his voice rising with each word. "I feel it, the chains around my soul. You used magic to trap me here, didn't you? To make me stay." Tears welled up in Amara's eyes. She wanted to deny it, to tell him it wasn't true, but the guilt gnawed at her insides. How could she explain that her intentions had been pure, that she only wanted to save their marriage? "Please," she pleaded, reaching out to him. "I didn't mean for this to happen. I just wanted us to be happy again." But Oluseyi wasn't listening. He threw the photo onto the floor, where it shattered into pieces. "Happy," he roared, his voice echoing through the house. "Do I look happy to you? You've cursed me, Amara. And now we're both trapped." He stormed past her, disappearing into the darkness of the hallway. Amara collapsed onto the couch, her mind reeling. For the first time, she truly understood the gravity of what she had done. Amara was terrified. She realized that the herbal concoction was not just a simple love potion, but something far more dangerous. The next day, she returned to Mama Ade, demanding answers. By morning, exhaustion had settled over Amara like a heavy blanket. She hadn't slept after Oluseyi's outburst, spending hours staring at the broken shards of their wedding photo scattered across the floor. Her thoughts raced. What had she unleashed? Was there any way to undo it? Determined to find answers, she returned to Mama Ade's hut, retracing the same winding path through the forest. This time, however, the journey felt longer, heavier, as if the trees themselves were closing in on her. When she arrived, Mama Ade was waiting for her, sitting cross-legged on her mat as if she'd known Amara would come. "I need to know the truth," Amara demanded, her voice shaking with desperation. "What exactly did you give me? What have I done to my husband?" Mama Ade's expression remained impassive, her piercing gaze unwavering. "You sought love at any cost," she said simply. "And now you see the price." The herbalist greeted her with a cold gaze. I warned you, she said. You wanted love at any cost, but not all methods are harmless. That concoction was part of an ancient ritual that binds a person's soul to yours. If you disrupt the balance, the consequences will be devastating. Amara sank to her knees, overwhelmed by the weight of the old woman's words. Please, she begged, tears streaming down her face. Isn't there anything you can do to fix this? To break the curse? Mama Ade shook her head slowly, her bony fingers tracing patterns in the dirt beneath her mat. Only the one who cast the curse can undo it, she replied. But beware, the price of freedom may be higher than you're willing to pay. What do you mean? Amara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The bond you created cannot be severed without sacrifice, Mama Ade explained. To undo the curse, you must destroy the object that symbolizes your connection. But even then, the spirits will demand acknowledgement of your wrongdoing. Are you prepared to face the truth and its consequences? Amara nodded numbly, though fear coiled tightly in her chest. She knew she had no choice but to try. Amara realized she needed to act quickly. She began researching old books and legends about breaking curses. One of them mentioned that to undo the curse, she needed to find an object symbolizing the bond between her and Olusii and destroy it at midnight at a crossroads. Back home, Amara scoured every resource she could find: old books passed down from her grandmother, online forums discussing African mysticism, and even whispered tales from neighbors who claimed to know a thing or two about curses. Finally, she discovered a ritual that seemed promising. It required finding an object that represented the bond between her and Olusii, a physical embodiment of their relationship, and destroying it at a crossroads under the light of the moon. The book warned that failure to complete the ritual properly would result in dire consequences, including the permanent entrapment of their souls. Amara immediately thought of their wedding photo, now lying shattered on the living room floor. Though painful, it was the perfect symbol of their union, and thus the key to breaking the curse. But that was only the beginning. The ritual required one more step: confessing her mistakes to the spirits. Amara had to admit everything to Olusii and ask for forgiveness, even if it meant losing him forever. Summoning the courage to confront Olusii was one of the hardest things Amara had ever done. She waited until evening, when the house was quiet and the children were asleep. Sitting across from him at the dining table, she took a deep breath and began speaking. I need to tell you something, she said softly, her voice trembling. Something I should have told you a long time ago. Olusii looked at her warily, his arms crossed over his chest. What is it? He asked, his tone guarded. Amara hesitated, searching for the right words. I want to see Mama Ade, she admitted finally. I gave you something to drink. A potion. I thought it would bring you back to me, but I didn't realize it would hurt you like this. I'm so sorry. For a moment, there was silence. Then Olusii sighed, his anger giving way to sadness. Why didn't you trust me enough to talk to me instead of turning to magic? He asked quietly. I was scared, Amara confessed, tears streaming down her face. I thought I was losing you and I didn't know what else to do. Though pained, Olusii agreed to help her perform the ritual. Together, they gathered the broken pieces of their wedding photo and set off into the night. When she told her husband the truth, he was shocked. Though his anger gradually turned to sadness, he agreed to help her perform the ritual. Together, they went to the crossroads, where Amara burned their wedding photo. The crossroads lay at the edge of town, where 4 dirt paths intersected beneath the vast expanse of the starry sky. Amara and Olusii stood side by side, the air thick with tension and anticipation. Amara knelt on the ground, placing the fragments of their wedding photo atop a pile of dry leaves. With trembling hands, she lit a match and watched as the flames consumed the remnants of their past. The fire crackled loudly, sending sparks spiraling into the night. As the smoke rose, Amara closed her eyes and whispered her confession aloud, not just to Olusii, but to the spirits who had witnessed their struggles. I'm sorry, she murmured. I acted out of fear and desperation. Please forgive me. Olusii placed a hand on her shoulder, offering silent support. Though neither spoke, they both felt the weight of the moment, their shared pain and hope for redemption. That night, the voices stopped and the shadows disappeared. But the price was high. Oluseyi decided to leave so they could both start anew. When they returned home, the oppressive atmosphere that had haunted their house for weeks was gone. The whispers no longer echoed in the halls, and the shadows no longer lingered in the corners. For the first time in months, Amara felt a sense of peace. But the cost of that peace was clear. The next morning, Oluseyi packed a suitcase and sat down with Amara to explain his decision. "We can't go back to how things were," he said gently. "Too much has happened. But maybe this is our chance to heal, to start over, separately." Amara nodded, though her heart ached. She understood that their marriage had been irreparably damaged, not just by the curse, but by the mistrust and manipulation that had led to it. Years later, Amara often thought about what had happened. She understood that true love cannot be forced. It either exists or it doesn't. Although her marriage ended, she learned to value herself and her life without relying on magic or external forces. Life moved on as it always does. Amara focused on rebuilding herself, rediscovering passions she had neglected during her marriage. She opened a small catering business, using recipes passed down from her mother, and found joy in creating meals that brought people together. Though she missed Oluseyi, she respected his decision to leave. They occasionally exchanged messages, checking in on each other and the children, but their relationship remained cordial rather than intimate. Most importantly, Amara learned to trust herself again. She realized that love, like life, requires patience, honesty, and effort, not shortcuts or desperate measures. Sometimes, passing by Mama Aid's house, she noticed the old woman watching her from afar. Amara knew that magic never leaves without a trace, and every choice has its consequences. Whenever Amara ventured near the edge of town, she couldn't help but glance toward Mama Aid's hut. Sometimes, the herbalist would be standing outside, her piercing gaze following Amara as she passed. Though unsettling, these encounters served as a reminder of the lessons she had learned. Magic, Amara realized, was neither inherently good nor evil. It was simply a tool, shaped by the intentions of those who wielded it. And while the scars of her choices would always remain, they had taught her resilience, self-awareness, and the importance of facing life's challenges head-on. In the end, Amara emerged stronger, not because she had conquered the supernatural, but because she had confronted the flaws within herself.